4.1 FM, 3WBC.
Yes, hello and welcome to 94.1 FM 3WBC, the voice of the Inner East. Just before on 94.1 FM we had big live conversations. Good evening and welcome to Balls and All. It is fantastic to have your company on this Monday night. Gemma Hooper and Stuart Gradden in the studio with me, Fletch Fraser. We say it every week, but this week was a huge week in sport. Collingwood in the AFL, they look really wobbly. And to be honest, the Pies are cooked.
I like how cold. I like how that's the first thing you bring up. We could have talked about State of Origin, we could talk about Formula One or anything else, and you start with Collingwood, mate. Collingwood. So I think that's a funny way to start.
I do think we may need to make our slogan, it's been a big week in sport, because every week we genuinely say it's been a big week in sport. Collingwood, that was a surprise. We will get into how I reacted to the footy a little bit later, but of course we are here with thanks to our station sponsors 4 and 20, Budget Car and Truck Rental and Piranha Snacks.
Big thank you to them for their continued support of the program and 3WBC. Let's roll into round 19 AFL results. We had 9 games on the weekend, of course, and Friday night it was a really high-scoring game of footy, entertaining game of footy between Essendon and Adelaide. They did me a favour with the footy, with my footy tipping. I was the only person in my footy tipping comp to tip Adelaide, so came through in the end. Adelaide winning by 2 points, 115 to 113. We don't see matches where both sides kick 100 points very often.
No, it was really high scoring. And you look at the disposals as well. High disposal count. Essendon 376 to Adelaide 247. But yeah, Essendon, I just don't understand what's happened. They got to round 15 flying, doing great, and then they've just taken a step. Do we think it's just the lack of confidence? Do we think it's just they've gone too far and just haven't been prepared enough?
I don't actually know the reasons, but there's got to be something going on with Essendon, because they do this every year. Let's be honest. In recent times, they have been a club that
chokes.
Well, they start the season. They start the season well, because they started last year well. They started previous years well, and then they falter and they fall away at the end. Or it's on occasion it can be vice versa, where they didn't start well and then they finish really strong. So there's something going on there, at Tullamarine. I don't know. There might be training, it might be the facilities and stuff like that, and I'm not sure. But they do fall away late in the seasons in recent times, so it might just be a fitness thing, perhaps.
Yeah, it's funny with the Bombers, because I was watching the game and there were certain points I could just see as soon as Rochelle kicked that goal. This is terrible. The first thing I thought of was my grandma, who's an Essendon supporter, because I asked her when Brad Scott was appointed what she thought of him, and she said, "He's rubbish. I don't want him coaching, blah, blah, blah."
Jury's still out on how good of a coach he is, because when he got those North Melbourne sides to the prelims back-to-back years, he did it from outside the top 4. Were the lists great, or was it more so talent, or was he coaching them up higher than they really should have gone? The jury's still out for mine. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe a bit of both, really, to be honest with you. But it was a big loss for Essendon. In the overall grand scheme of things. Now they're really in trouble in terms of the finals. Move on to the Saturday games. First up was what they're calling the Expansion Cup now on social media. Greater Western Sydney and the Gold Coast Suns, and GWS. Well, they won by 39 points. Probably should have won by a lot more, to be honest with you. Gold Coast were very disappointing once again away from home, and that's been their biggest issue this year. So, and that's probably going to cost them finals. Let's be honest.
I think so.
They're probably going to miss finals because of how poorly they play away from up on the Gold Coast, and of course they play home games at Darwin as well. Other results: St Kilda versus West Coast. St Kilda won by 72 points, so 12 goals. Not really too unsurprising, I think. No. Eagles coming back to reality after that first match under Jared Schofield, which was pretty good against Brisbane at home. Again, another side that struggles away from Optus Stadium, and well beaten by St Kilda.
Do want to note that Jaden Hunt, 35 disposals in that game. Tim Kelly was the closest West Coast player with 24 disposals. He had over 10 more disposals than any other player on the ground. So just some incredible work from him. But yeah, hard for West Coast. Obviously, you don't want to lose your coach mid-season, but they'll have their time. Yeah,
they're probably the worst team in terms of form at the moment. To be honest, because Richmond look competitive at times. And North, obviously, we'll talk about it when we get to that match at the end. I'll let Gemma have the mic. Hawthorn 133, defeating Collingwood 67, an 11-goal win for the Hawks, who are now right amongst the finals race.
We're over 100 in the percentage. It is 100.4, but it's enough.
It's better than Essendon's, and they're in the top 8. So.
I did say to Fletch earlier, I don't normally rewatch a game straight away after it's happened, and I watched the Hawthorn game last night. So I could not believe it when I checked the scores at halftime, because of course I was broadcasting Box Hill versus North Melbourne on the weekend right here on 3WBC. But Hawthorn, I think it's just great. The wizard, Nick Watson, he's really coming into his stride now. He's gotten some confidence. He kicked 3 goals, 3 important goals as well. Connor McDonald, 4 goals. Luke Bruce, 4 goals. Jack Ginnivan, 31 disposals on the ground. Now, there are a lot of mixed feelings about the way he carried on the weekend. I am all for it, because I know he did request to be traded, but that was because Collingwood didn't really want to keep him either. He didn't feel like he necessarily was going to grow with them. So I think coming to Hawthorn was obviously a great decision. He is a divisive person in footy, and that is fine. But I love that he is so passionate about Hawthorn and the club, and he's really bought in to what Hawthorn is doing. He's kissing the badge. He's really cheering. And he's giving it back to supporters who are booing him.
Yeah, I think a lot of the football world probably gets behind it right now. So non-Hawthorn supporters probably get behind it because for something like this, because they're a young upcoming team. They haven't made finals in a few years, and they beat Collingwood, and we all know that Collingwood, one of the most, if not the most hated team in the comp. I think there comes a time, and Hawthorn, I reckon they'll play finals this year, sneak into the first week, and then who knows from there. There will come a time where because they're going to continue to get better and better, and people will start to get sick of that. The way they go about it.
Yeah, I think if they continue to go this way forever, then obviously you're going to get more flack and be like, oh, well, why are they still doing it? But you look at the way Hawthorn does it, and I've seen this from unbiased perspectives. I know I'm a Hawthorn supporter, so I don't want to come across as super biased, but people talk about other clubs and players at the moment who are doing these celebrations, and it's not the same as the way Hawthorn does it. And I don't know if it's just the pure joy, because no one expected for them to go this well this year.
Especially after the start.
Especially going 5-0. It's just, I think let the club, especially the younger players, have fun, celebrate now, because every week is oh my gosh, we're still going. We're still going. If it continues through to next year and stuff, with the over-celebrating, then it might raise the question, okay, what satisfaction do you need out of games for you to be reacting this way all the time? But for now, I'm so behind it.
Indeed, and it's good because it drums up media attention as well for the club.
Exactly. Aura points. It's all about the aura points.
It's not the media. We'll leave it at the media, I think. We'll move on to the other games. Port Adelaide 116 defeated Richmond 75. That one was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be for 3 quarters, and then Port really pulled away in the last. I think it was 10 points at 3-quarter time, and then it kicked 4 goals, 8-1 behind in the last quarter. So really dominated that last quarter in particular. Speaking of dominating, Western Bulldogs 95 defeating Geelong 48
gonna
at
I
GMHBA.
thought you skipped over it. And I was like, that's sneaky.
Well, I've actually got it here on the AFL app. It's actually Port's ahead of the Geelong
okay,
game.
different on the website.
Different on the website for some reason, but I wish I could skip over it. It was a really, it was a bit of a, well, it brought me back to reality certainly because the Cats have been playing pretty well previous 3 matches, and the Dogs, for a club that hadn't won down there in 20 years, they've now won twice in 2 years down there.
Incredible.
So maybe teams are starting to figure it out because Port broke a long drought there as well. So maybe people are starting to figure it out. I always thought the Cats were a little bit overrated this year, particularly after the 7-0 start, and maybe that's the season being as long as it is starting to come back into effect there for Geelong. It was a really poor performance, it had to be said. But I think the Dogs, if the Dogs are inconsistent, they really annoy me, and I think they annoy a lot of people because they're really inconsistent. Top of the table, top 4 clash on Sunday, Brisbane versus Sydney, and it was Brisbane 79 defeating Sydney 77 in what was one of the matches of the season. And it was a back and forth one. Brisbane got off to a very good start. Sydney fought back and got ahead, and then Brisbane had to fight back in that last quarter to get back into the lead, and there was back and forth from there. Huge win for Brisbane. Keeps them, I think they're third on the ladder now. They're right up amongst it, if not, they're still top. They are third on the ladder. Really well placed. Sydney, still not worried about them.
No.
They've lost 3 of 4, but all relatively close matches, and I'm not too worried about them. Fremantle, 116, defeated Melbourne 66. Freo, way too good, to be honest with you. They're inconsistent like the Dogs as well, but their best I think is better than the Dogs based on what we've seen this year. They were far too good, and really it should have been a bigger margin based on the way they dominated. It was 24-3 clearances in the first half.
That's crazy.
That is an absurd number, an absurd difference.
Does Simon Goodwin need to go?
Yep.
I've never rated him particularly highly. I don't think they'll let him go this year. They've extended him through to 2026. Be walking a fine line next year, I reckon, if they don't turn around. Of course, they don't have Gawn, they don't have Petrarca at the moment, so I think they'll leave it at Mulligan. And better make this quick. Carlton 107, North Melbourne 88. I'll hand it over to Fletch.
Yeah, it was an intriguing game of footy, better than 3 goals 7 the other week for Curnow, kicking 4 goals 2. Owies, Motlop and Fogarty, the little smalls. Owies kicking 3 goals, Motlop with 3 as well. Fogarty and Mackay kicking 2 goals. Paddy Cripps, a Brownlow contender, well and truly. 29 touches again, going at 83% efficiency. Sheasel, 35 touches and 2 goals. Very quickly, though, the third quarter was where my nerves went from I was as anxious as a kid sitting there, year 12 exams all over again. But in that third quarter, 7 goals and 5 behinds to 3 goals 1. They have these blitzes. It's either the third or fourth quarters, even the starts. If they play like that for 4 quarters, they will be unstoppable. It's just they're very inconsistent and they've got problems everywhere. Yes, indeed. We will now get to the State of Origin, and what a game that was. New South Wales defeating Queensland 14-4. A 2-1 victory there for New South Wales. Queensland trialists in the match. I watched my first rugby game in full, and oh, goodness gracious.
It's full on, isn't it?
It's full on. The tackles, some of the tackles, they just slam them into the ground. And at particular points, I'm like, where's the high contact free? I'm just like, oh, it is really fast, attacking, full on. It's just bang, bang, bang. It's like a freight train.
Yes.
Quick, quick, quick. But it's entertaining. I still don't get the rules, so oh dear.
I was really shocked that the Maroons only scored 4 the entire game. Like, that's incredibly low for them when they've got a very consistently good side, go very well in State of Origin normally, but to only get 4 is quite a shock.
At home as well.
Yes.
So at Suncorp Stadium, Lang Park, very disappointing. It took a while for, it was a bit of back and forth. Queensland actually led the vast majority of the match despite only having the 4 points because New South Wales couldn't really break through for a long time, and then eventually they got there in the end, and that's kind of what I was expecting. New South Wales are a better team at the moment. They've got better players, and I think the result well and truly shone through by the end.
And I think the other thing as well that was intriguing, I actually didn't realise, but in deciding matches, the Blues had just won their 6th match out of 23 of the deciding final matches. It was also their first victory in a decider at Lang Park since 2005. So 19 years ago, that is another long drought. So a bit of history in the making there for the Blues, and a great performance all round. And it was a really exciting series, a great competition indeed.
I definitely have to agree with you, Fletch, especially when both states won an Origin before getting into the final, which is always super fun and super competitive. Now, getting into the Suncorp Super Netball. We have week 1 finals happening over the weekend. The Adelaide Thunderbirds are through to the grand final after defeating the Vixens on Saturday night. The Vixens have a second chance, though, and will be at John Cain Arena this weekend for double or nothing. Now, the Vixens, they've gone really well this year, but lost 43-68 from the Adelaide Thunderbirds. The real damaging quarter was the second quarter. Thunderbirds 19, Vixens 9.
They were absolutely mauled in that second quarter, and I was watching the game, and it was the way the Thunderbirds played. They had the crowd behind them as well. Given the grand final's also going to be in Adelaide, they're a good team, the Thunderbirds. The Vixens, they need to respond this week because they were rubbish.
They were well beaten in every quarter as well. So 19-13 in the first quarter, 19-9 in the second, 16-10, and then 14-11. So they were well beaten by the Thunderbirds, who top for a reason. So not really. No, I suppose the margin surprised me, but not surprising to see the Thunderbirds actually winning that one. And then the Fever, 72 defeated the Lightning 62, and the Fever will take on the Vixens this weekend. And
the Fever as well, they've won their last 4 games too, whereas Vixens, out of the last 5 games, they've only won 2 of them. So it's going to be like a real test for the Vixens this weekend at John Cain Arena.
Indeed, and that match is at 5 p.m. this Saturday. We're going to head to our first break and talk all things Oscar Piastri and the Formula One next here on Balls and All. Yes, hello and welcome back to Balls and All on 94.1 FM 3WBC, the voice of the Inner East. An Australian McLaren driver, Oscar Piastri, claimed his first Formula One Grand Prix victory. What a win it was, the 5th Australian to do so as well. Well done to the young driver.
I'm so glad that McLaren did stick to their plan and got Piastri the win, but for quite a few laps there, it did not look like it was going to happen at all. Lando was really trying to prove a point to the team as he's higher in the championship, would have gotten them more points towards taking over Verstappen, so he did not want to give up that lead that he had, but if you're first out through the turns, generally you want to try and keep that first position. And Piastri, he's been a really good team player for McLaren as well. So really happy for him. He is going to be an absolute excellent driver in the future. He's already fantastic now. So cool, calm and collected. He is going to go so far in the sport, Stuart.
I did see something that was very interesting. He's the first person to be born in the 21st century to win a Formula One Grand Prix. First person ever
Wow.
To be born in the 21st century to do that. So that's very cool. He's a real talent. There's no doubt about it. Because Lando's one of the best drivers on the grid. And
100%.
so he's been able to relatively keep up. He's only 40 points behind in the championship, Oscar. So he's doing a really good, behind Lando, I mean. He's 5th in the championship and obviously won the Grand Prix. But it does come with the caveat of what happened with McLaren. And just for the record, this is not Lando's fault. This is not Oscar's fault. It comes down to team strategy and the team as a whole. Basically, what happened was Lewis Hamilton, who ended up finishing 3rd in the race, he was 3rd at the time, come down and pitted. McLaren covered that with Lando Norris. They pitted him the very next lap. And so, obviously, the undercut coming into play means you got fresher tyres, means you're going to go quicker.
Yes.
Then if someone else in front has older tyres, which was the case with Oscar Piastri, he came down a couple of laps later and lost the lead as a result. So what I'm trying to say is McLaren completely botched it because
they did.
Because the whole plan was for them to have a 1-2 and whoever was first at turn 1, which was Oscar. He passed just reminding people that Oscar got past Lando at turn 1 at the start of the race and led the entire race up to that point. So that idea, basically what I'm trying to say is the strategy was wrong. They probably should have pitted Oscar first.
Yes.
Rather than Lando, because Lando probably still would have come out ahead of Lewis. And as a result, Lando got very upset, and justifiably so. Because if I was a race car driver, I wish I was, but if I was a race car driver and I had my engineer come over the radio and say, "Look, you've got to swap positions here with your teammate. This is the way it's going to go," and you're leading the race, I wouldn't be happy either. You got out in front, and he was, to be fair to Lando, he was running faster at the time. At that time, and I think it was fortunate because Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton had a little tangle, and that opened up a bit more time for Lando to drop back and let Oscar through. So I think that was a bit fortunate there. But Lando was pretty upset about that. He said some things in the post race that he probably wish he could have his time back again.
Yes.
And as a result, it wasn't really a great look for him. But really, McLaren, they had a 1-2 finish. It was a perfect day. They're second in the Constructors' Championship, and Lando's still second, Oscar's still fifth rather, and they're going really well. And it doesn't, and they really soured it by the way they went about it.
They need to sort of reassess how they're going to do those Sunday meetings and really plan before they go into the race. And I think it also is really frustrating for Oscar because he has sacrificed his role in order to get Lando in front and has been a true team player the entire time. And yet his first win, it's been marred by Lando getting upset and not responding over the radio, which everyone can hear the radio. So everyone's going to know that there are issues with McLaren. And then you have Verstappen on the side getting upset with everyone, and the team at Red Bull are having to tell him to not say anything over radio, otherwise it's childish. The drivers were just not in a good mood yesterday, but all of this is going to... Piastri's win is now going to be completely overshadowed by the drivers on the weekend, which is really frustrating.
Yeah, and I tell you what, Max Verstappen, obviously, he's the championship leader by a country mile. He's probably going to win the championship again. He hasn't won in a few weeks. And, we've seen this in the past with him where he can get very upset.
Yes.
By if things aren't really going his way. And they certainly weren't going his way in the race. And in the end, really, it's like we saw the Max of old. The frustration. He was livid throughout the whole race, and the team were really getting into him and just telling him, look, you've calm down, don't do anything. Childish, absolutely, it was childish. And in the end, he's still well placed to win the championship, but it was a terrible look for him. And then what happened with Lewis Hamilton?
Yes,
no penalty at turn 1, so Lewis is maybe moving across in the braking zone. Max is locked up. There's been a collision. Max ended up dropping back to 5th as a result. He actually got airborne. I'm surprised he was able to finish the race.
Yeah.
But Max got airborne, fell back to 5th. Lewis still finished on the podium. There was no penalty for it. Whether or not there was is something to be determined a little bit later. But we'll move on now to some score checks around the Eastern Football League. It was I think we had a week off for a bunch of teams in the Premier Division. Only the two matches this past Saturday. Starting off with quite a demolition. Blackburn 24-15, 159 Jesus. To Norwood 5-3, 33. Jeez. The year just cannot get worse for Norwood at this point.
No, when you've got players like Jake Hammond and Kripolis kicking 6 goals each for Blackburn, that's just crazy. And Josh Tovey kicked a goal, Jake Hill kicked a goal, and Joe Fisher kicked 3 goals for Norwood, but it's just not enough.
Yeah, they're really struggling at the moment. They're really poor, scoreless in the last quarter. Blackburn kicked 8 goals, 3 in the last quarter. They're in a really... It's going to be hard to see, whether or not they win another game this year. I've got to look through their fixture here as to when they come up to. You know what? We've got a big match in round 18, the final round of the year. Norwood and Berwick. Those two teams are one, and they've only got the one win, and that's in the last round. So, if the way the two sides are going at the moment, then that will be to stay up in the Premier Division. So that's a really important one. And then East Ringwood, who are on top of the ladder, they remain on top with a 23-point win over Noble Park, 15-6-96 to Noble Park, 11-7-73, and it was really the first quarter where it was 32-1. That was probably the major difference in the match between the two sides, and to be honest, the first half.
Well, you even look at the second quarter, and East Ringwood were 11-3-69 to Noble Park, 3-3-21. So it was really that third and fourth quarter that Noble Park were really able to fight back, and I commend them for getting within 23 points, because to be down by 31 at the first quarter, that is not an easy fight back at all.
And to be as far down as they were, to be 48 points down, it was good on them for to be able to fight on and fight through that, and fight all the way to the end, I suppose, and make it a bit more respectable than the first half would suggest. And then we move on to the senior Premier Division in the Eastern Football Netball League. Baronia 139 were defeated by South Croydon 7-7-49. So South Croydon second on the ladder in the Premier Women's, and got another comprehensive win over the weekend, although it did take them a while to really put them away.
Yeah, it's not good when you look at the quarter breakdown for Baronia, and they kicked 3 behinds in the first quarter and then didn't score again until the fourth. But in saying that, South Croydon, they only scored 1 point in the second quarter. That third quarter, they were able to get away, and then that last quarter really put the Jets on. But for the first half, Baronia were able to keep it locked down, which is really impressive. It's just unfortunate that they weren't able to get anything up forward for their side.
And Grimwade kicking 3 goals as well, Martin with 2 goals. So those two players kicking 5 out of the 7 goals for South Croydon, which shows their dominance down forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And we nearly had a major boil over in the next one. Mount Evelyn 3-3-21 defeated by Eastern Devils 3-7-25. Eastern Devils, talked about it last week. They have I think the second longest winning streak in the history of the Eastern Football League, men or women. Mount Evelyn coming into this game were 4-7. Coming into this game, they're 6 out of 8 on the ladder, and they got within 4 points of the Eastern Devils. So, and particularly when the Devils have a percentage of 464.47%. So, very, we don't like to talk about honourable losses. I don't really like that moniker. I don't really like doing that, but has to be said, that is a very, very gutsy performance by Mount Evelyn to be as close as they were there.
And then the Whitehorse Pioneers 2-3-15 defeating the Basin 1-8-14. So a 1 point win there. A very good win indeed. And it is... What did you sort of make of that game, Stewie?
Well, I think when you look at the you look at the scoring shots, 9 scoring shots to 5. We talk about how important goal kicking is, and 1 goal 8, and losing a game by a point is, that's something that we'll have to look back on and just think, geez, we really let one slip away. To be honest with you, Basin come in 7th of 8 on the ladder. Whitehorse Pioneers 3rd on the ladder. So again, nothing major boil over nearly, but that's where the game was won and lost. It was goal kicking more so than anything else. And then finally we had South Belgrave 1-4-10, defeated by Vermont 3-11-29. Upset there as well as Vermont's 5th on the ladder, South Belgrave 4th. So there were a few, we had a couple of close near boil overs, I suppose, and then there was that Vermont game where they were far too good.
And now moving on to the NBL 1 South finals from week 1. We normally look at both the Nunawading Spectres and Knox Raiders results, but unfortunately the Spectres haven't made finals in either the men's or the women's. So kicking it off with the men's elimination final, they played the Dandenong Rangers at Dandenong on Saturday night. The Rangers 98 defeating the Raiders. So a 7-point win there. The Raiders have been eliminated in the men's side of things, which is obviously disappointing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at the quarter-by-quarter breakdown of that one, it was really the second quarter in particular where the Rangers 26 outscored the Knox Raiders by 26-11 rather, and in a 7-point game, to only score 11 points is very, very disappointing. It has to be said, particularly given they scored 34 in the first and 31 in the third. So just went cold in that quarter in particular. They only scored 15 in the last, and the Rangers scored 22. So especially that second quarter is probably where you look at it with a bit of disappointment. A really disappointing end for the Knox Raiders in terms of their NBL 1 South defence. They were champions last year. They were national champions last year as well. So the best team in the country. And to not even get past the first week is very disappointing for them.
And then on the women's side of things, their women's team, the Knox Raiders, they've had 20 wins and 2 losses. They lost to Mount Gambier 78-86, but the Raiders finished first on the ladder, meaning that they will have a second chance and will play the Ballarat Miners at Knox Basketball Stadium this upcoming Sunday. Quickly as well, we will be talking to the Knox Raiders senior coach in the women's side, Jess May, coming up at 6:45.
Fletch's time travel hour.
It's really... Oh, dear.
We're still getting used to the new time slot here.
We are.
We love being at 6. It's great to be here at 6, but gosh, doing the run sheets and on the air, but no, 6:45 would be great to speak to Jess, because the Raiders, they've had such a successful season. I know they're coming off a loss, but they've been so good all year, and just get an insight into Knox and how their women's program is run, and her approach as a coach is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, and it's really disappointing given that they won 12 in a row prior to this as well. So Mount Gambier, out of those 2 losses, Mount Gambier was one of those earlier in the year in round 7. So will be really interesting I'm really looking forward to talking to Jess and hearing about that, and I'm looking forward to this weekend's matchup, which is up against the Ballarat Miners, who won their way through to the semi-final on the weekend.
Indeed, and we might actually get to that break now a little bit earlier than expected, and more of the program right after this here on 3WBC.
94.1 FM, 3WBC.
Hello and welcome back to Balls and All on 94.1 FM 3WBC. We are now joined by Jess May, who is the Knox Raiders women's head coach in the NBL 1 South competition. Hello Jess, thank you for joining us on Balls and All. How are you doing this evening?
Hey guys, I'm good. Just another Monday night preparing for next week's game, so it's exciting.
And I guess to kick things off before getting into the game from the weekend, you played basketball with the Knox Raiders. What was it like playing with the club and then going on to coach them?
I guess it holds a special part in my heart because it's where I've grown up as well. So I wasn't always a Knox Raider though, but I guess the reason I've always loved this place the most is because it feels like family, and the culture is such a family-orientated, community-based place to play. So, I don't know, I guess you feel like you're just more connected to that spot than anyone else you go.
Hi, Jess. Thanks for joining us this evening. Obviously, unfortunate loss on the weekend against Mount Gambier. What was your biggest takeaway from that in terms of areas to improve on going into this week against Ballarat?
I guess, end of the day, it was a pretty disappointing loss just because they did shoot so well, and it's really hard to beat any team on any given day who's going to shoot 50% from the three-point line. So I guess our biggest focus will be just like more urgency to close out shots, getting on top of more, wider on the three-point line, because Ballarat are going to do the same thing. They're a great shooting team, and they can probably do the exact same thing to us if they, come out and shoot well as well. So no matter how well we can play, obviously we've got to stop their flow of runs and good shooting.
And your side had an incredible run, 12 games in a row without a loss, and Mount Gambier just getting on top of you, both those losses. How was it sort of addressing the team after the game and sort of re-establishing that drive for the upcoming game against Ballarat on the weekend?
I guess we always knew that Mount Gambier was going to be tough coming into it anyway. We've always, with those two times we've played them, it has been an absolute battle. So I guess knowing this could have been the result that happened out of it. Obviously we didn't come into that thinking that, and we're confident. The silver lining was that they had to shoot extremely well again to get over top of us. So we can kind of come away from that saying that, we're still in a good spot. We still played really good basketball. Statistically, we did really well. We made them we made them have 19 turnovers. So I guess it was just for us to just stay positive with it and know confidently that we are still extremely good basketball side, and this is just hopefully a one-off, and we can just obviously continue to work on our defense and stop other shooters shooting.
And you sort of touched on it a little bit, but what was sort of, I guess, your messaging to the playing group after the match?
I think we did. We just really hit on the stats and saying and keeping those positive lines about, what we did really well in that game. And yes, it's deflating. And it's one of those things where, you've got to experience that hurt. And if you don't feel pain from losing, you probably didn't care enough in the first place. So I guess it's just understanding that you can only control what you can control, and the outcome is what it is. So we just got to move forward now and keep looking forward to the next game.
And your game against Ballarat this weekend is going to be at home at Knox Basketball Stadium. The team this weekend, obviously, it's do or die, but for yourself as a coach, how do you sort of frame the way that the team's gone this year, having so much success and then sort of having that final push towards the grand final?
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows that finals is a different beast. And I guess there is a little bit of familiarity playing against Ballarat because Kennedy used to be the Knox coach. So we do have a little bit of calmness knowing exactly what he's going to bring offensively, so to prepare for and scout. Naturally, we also know that he's got a lot of strings to his bow, and he's a very extremely great coach who can definitely come up with his own ideas to twist, and he knows obviously our athletes extremely well. But I don't know. I guess it's the same thing as any. We'll just come in preparing for confidence, knowing that we know what we're doing, and prepare. I think to be the most prepared team, you should be having a better, successful night.
I did want to ask about one of your players, one of your stars in Alicia Froling, who had 15 points and 12 rebounds on the weekend, averaging 23 points and 12 and a half rebounds for the year. How pleased have you been with her output and what she's delivered so far this year?
I mean, it's kind of Alicia. Everywhere she goes, she does that. So I think to her, she's a competitive beast herself, and I think if she wasn't doing that, I would be concerned every night. Actually, that was actually a quiet night for her against Mount Gambier, to be fair. She is quite beaten and bruised right now because she does cop a lot of hits week in, week out. So to her credit, to be her credit more so this year, I've been more proud of the way she's handled, I guess, receiving those hits. Because probably before her emotions probably got away from her a couple of seasons in a row, but this season she's been extremely mellowed and calm about taking those hits and just continuing to play through it.
And outside of coaching, you're a primary school teacher. I guess what are sort of some of the main things that you take across from your role as a teacher to them being a coach?
I think coaching and teaching go hand in hand. It's all the same. It's all relative. You coach, if you could say you're just coaching kids in a classroom or you're teaching athletes on a basketball court, it's all exactly the same. I think it's all about preparation and organisation, though. So to be able to obviously plan a training session and be able to plan a classroom lesson, they're very similar, and you just got to be organised. So I think the translation of organisation really helps.
And for the way you sort of structure and plan, I know a lot of teachers have to do all the real proper lesson plans and stuff. Do you go into your training sessions and your games with all the proper plans, or do you just go, look, for games we're going to approach it this way, and for training we're going to approach it a different way?
I guess, for everyone who knows me well, I come in extraordinarily organised and everything is nutted out to a T. Mm-hmm. There will be images, there will be diagrams, there's videos, there's clips of everything, the statistics coming through. So it is very, very detailed, and I'm very meticulous in the way I obviously approach everything. That's just kind of who I am in general. So definitely not just one approach or just it's always going to be very well thought out. Yeah.
And how would you sort of describe your coaching style and the way that you coach?
I'm very calm. I think that's kind of what people normally say when they look at me. They're kind of like, how do you stay so calm? So I guess there's probably a sense of calmness about how I do that. I don't know if that's because of the classroom too, you've got to stay calm in those situations of being patient. But I've always tried my best to be a player-first focus. And just kind of knowing that, I trust what they want to do and they trust their thought process as well, and kind of look into them. Because they are senior athletes and they have been playing this game for a long time. So I guess as well, bridging off from when I was an athlete, I love when my coach listens to me. So I guess it's kind of like that, getting that feel for understanding that they have a different feel to what I'm seeing on the basketball court.
Now, you said, obviously, we know that you played basketball at Knox Raiders, a variety of other basketball teams as well. When you moved into coaching, how much did you take from other coaches that you had when you moved into coaching?
Definitely a lot. I was extraordinarily lucky that I had some amazing coaches coach me over that time. So Cheryl Chambers obviously being one of the last ones I had at Knox. I guess Guy Malloy, as well, so that's already two WNBL players. Two WNBL coaches already had me. And I was just extraordinarily fortunate to have such, two coaches that I could really take away what I wanted to take away from it and what I didn't want to take away. So there's definitely probably a lot more Cheryl in me than there is Guy, but just because I think I had it also a lot longer. And I still stole some of her offenses, tweaked it myself, but I really liked the way she was also very calm in the way she approached, games and situations and trainings.
And just finally, Jess, what's been your biggest achievement or a moment in your coaching career that you can always look back on and just be so proud of yourself and your side?
For this season, or do you mean the whole?
In general, it can be from this season or anything that sort of has made you feel like, yes, this is what I love doing.
I don't know if there's an exact moment, but I think it's always when I look back at, progress of athletes and how far they've come under me. So I guess we statistically can look at those things and see, well, have they improved and who is improving by how much? So I guess I've definitely got a certain athlete I can think of in mind when she came across to me one year when you said, we can make this better for you. And she doubled her stats statistically. And I think she still continues to say to me as well, by far, if she was to come back and play in Victoria, because she no longer plays in Victoria, that I'm the only coach that she want to ever come back and play for. And I guess, those are the important parts. That's why I do it, really. I don't care about the wins and losses at the end of the day. It's nice, but knowing I've made an impact in someone else's life is a lot bigger.
And thank you so much for joining us this evening, Jess. All the best of luck for this weekend's game against the Ballarat Miners. Thanks for your time.
Awesome. No worries, guys. Thank you.
And Jess May, the Knox Raiders NBL 1 South women's head coach, joining us there on Balls and All. And we see a lot of coaches. Another example, Zane Littlejohn, the current Box Hill Hawks coach. There are a number of coaches that are involved with teaching, and then they sort of come across or they might be coaching sport on the outside. And like she said, it sort of really does go hand in hand.
Oh, it really does. And like she said, having the calmness of being in a classroom, being able to translate that onto a sporting field is so important as well. So really great to hear her insight and talk about seeing players progress is what makes her happy as a coach. It's just so nice to hear. But Fletch, just really quickly, a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about your basketballing career as a junior.
Yeah.
Do you think you'd ever make a return as a senior player?
No. No. 100% no.
No.
No chance.
What if we did a 3WBC basketball friendly game? Would you play in that? And if any listeners would like to see this happen, please contact us on Balls and All by Facebook or Instagram. I will make it happen.
No, it's probably not going to happen, to be fair.
I will post you up, just for the record. If that were to happen, I will put you in the post. I'll put you in a blender. Quickly, before we go, just wanted to quickly mention the VFL Women's Grand Final result, because that happened that Grand Final was yesterday at ETU Stadium. Obviously, Brad and Laushi will talk about it more in VFL Rewind in a few minutes. But North Melbourne, 10-8-68, defeated the Western Bulldogs, 7-6-48. So good performance there. Great match. Great grand final. And might be a good sign for North Melbourne in terms of their AFL women's ambitions as well.
Definitely. I'm so happy for them. They've got a really fantastic women's program at North Melbourne, both their VFLW and their AFLW, making the grand final last year in the AFLW as well. So I'm so happy for them. And to get some silverware in the cabinetry artistry, I think is really important for the club at the moment, while their men's sides are rebuilding and going through a transitional journey to have success with the women's.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartly agree with that. Although the men's side, of course, going a little bit better now in recent times as well. So there is light on the horizon for North Melbourne there.
And very quickly as well, big news out of Carlton this evening with promising ruckman Tom de Koning suffering 2 injuries. So he was diagnosed with a collapsed lung following yesterday's game against the Kangaroos. He also underwent scans today which revealed a fractured foot. His foot was stood on during that match against the Kangaroos. He's expected to be sidelined for the remainder of the home and away season, with a chance for him to return in final. So all the best there to one of the up-and-coming rucks in the comp.
Yeah, important piece for Carlton out of the middle. So it's a bad blow for him to go down.
Definitely.
Means that Pitnet will come back in the side, and we'll see how he goes in the midfield for the rest of the year.
Indeed, and a massive thank you to everyone that has joined us this evening on Balls and All. Jess May, thank you for your time and all the best of luck this weekend. Gemma and Stuart, a massive thank you to you as always. Another huge show.
Thank you, Fletch. Thank you, Stuart. Olympics start this Friday, this weekend. So Monday night we'll get to talk about the Olympics, and I am so excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Really looking forward to the Olympics and hopefully bringing home a few gold medals.
It will be fantastic indeed. Coming up next is VFL Rewind with Brad Mullen and Peter Lausch from 7 until 8 p.m. here on 3WBC. Take it away, Brad and Lauschie. Goodbye for now.